Tonight, we're uncovering the secret history of the alien Pokémon. There is a lot to explore here, but I'll keep the pacing gentle so you can still settle in and fall asleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. In the original Pokémon games, Clefairy was never plainly described as an alien. It was simply a rare, gentle Pokémon found deep inside Mount Moon, a place already surrounded by falling stones, ancient tunnels, and the quiet suggestion that something unusual had happened there long ago. Its evolution required a moonstone, making the connection even stronger. Clefairy was not merely a creature that lived near the moon. It was a creature whose entire family seemed to answer to it. That detail mattered, because Pokémon rarely explained everything directly. In the first generation, a moonstone could feel like a magical object, a piece of folklore, or a fragment of another world. Clefairy's appearance added to the uncertainty. It had a rounded body, small wings, bright eyes, and a shape that felt less like an ordinary animal and more like a visitor from a story about the night sky. The games left that impression suspended between myth and biology. The anime, however, was willing to take the idea much further. When Ash and his companions reached Mount Moon, they encountered Professor Seymour, a researcher whose theory was that Clefairy had come from outer space. His idea was not treated as absolute fact, but it was presented with enough seriousness to make the possibility feel real. The strange Pokémon gathered around the moonstone, the mysterious mountain, and the falling stars suddenly seemed connected. Moon was no longer just a cave where trainers searched for fossils and rare encounters. It became a possible landing place. In another anime story, the implication became even more charmingly literal. Clefairy were shown collecting objects and carrying them away as they tried to repair a damaged spaceship. The scene transformed their familiar behavior into something with a hidden purpose. What looked like stealing, curiosity, or mischief could have been the work of stranded travelers gathering parts for a journey home. For many fans, this was the moment Clefairy became the original alien Pokémon. Not because the games had confirmed it, but because the anime gave a shape to a theory that had been quietly waiting inside the setting. The moon connection, the moonstone, the isolated mountain, and the unusual design all became pieces of one gentle mystery. Years later, the introduction of Cleffa made that mystery more focused. Cleffa was even smaller and more star-like, and later, Pokédex descriptions connected the species with meteorites and places where objects from the sky had fallen. Cleffa and its evolutions could appear near impact sites or gather beneath meteor showers, as though the family remembered something about the journey that had brought them to Earth. This is where the distinction between the games and the anime becomes important. The games tended to preserve the uncertainty. Clefairy could be lunar, mystical, or simply a rare Pokémon with an unusual habitat. The anime leaned toward a literal extraterrestrial origin. Neither interpretation completely erased the other. Instead, they allowed Clefairy to exist in two forms at once, a creature of moonlit folklore and a possible visitor from beyond the planet. Then, in the early 2000s, Pokémon introduced a character that did not need quite so much interpretation. Deoxys arrived, as a far more direct expression of alien life. Its story began with a virus traveling through space, altered by laser radiation, until it became a living Pokémon. The concept moved away from moon legends and towards science fiction, mutation, and the possibility that life might cross the emptiness between worlds. Even its name suggests biology. Deoxys echoes deoxyribonucleic acid, the molecule associated with genetic information, while its body resembles a strange combination of a chromosome, a living signal, and a classic visitor from another planet. Its different forms made the idea feel even less terrestrial. Deoxys was not simply an animal from an unusual region. It was an organism shaped by forces outside the ordinary history of Pokémon life. Together, Clefairy and Deoxys reveal two different ways the series imagines aliens. Clefairy represents the old mystery, where moonlight, meteorites, and rumors create a feeling that something came from the stars. Deoxys represents the later answer, where extraterrestrial biology is openly part of the story. Between them is a quiet evolution in Pokémon storytelling. The earliest games often relied on folklore, implication, and unanswered questions. As the world expanded, those hints could become stranger and more scientific. Yet the original feeling never disappeared. Even now, Clefairy remains the Pokémon that makes the night sky feel inhabited, while Deoxys reminds us that somewhere beyond that sky, something truly unfamiliar may already be moving through the dark. Think of it as a single, sweeping image. On one side, a cluster of Clefairy swaying gently in a moonlit clearing, their movements soft and ritualistic. On the other, the crystalline, shifting form of Deoxys, coiling through the silent void between stars. These two images bookend a question the franchise has been whispering for decades. Were Pokémon always quietly building an alien mythology? Not with loud pronouncements, but with moonlit hints, falling stones, and a viral entity born in the light of distant lasers. The heart of this mystery isn't a simple yes or no. It's the space between a hint and a hard fact. It's the slow, careful line drawn between implication and confirmation. The story begins, as many of these quiet legends do, with a simple item, the Moonstone. In the earliest games, finding one deep in Mount Moon felt less like a discovery and more like uncovering a relic. You used it, and your Nidorino transformed. You used it, and a small, pink, star-shaped Pokémon, Clefairy, began to glow and change into something larger, more powerful. The connection was never stated outright, but it was felt. This creature, found only in a cavern named for the moon, evolved with a fragment of that moon. Its entire family, from the tiny Cleffa to the grand Clefable, seemed to orbit a single, luminous idea. The games held this idea in a delicate balance. Clefairy was rare, mystical, and its Pokédex entries spoke of lunar dances and quiet, group behaviors. It was an animal tied to a celestial body, but it was still an animal. The speculation was left to the player, to the quiet space between the pixels, but the anime needed more. It took that whisper and gave it a voice, however hesitant. When Ash and his friends stumbled into Mount Moon, they didn't just find Pokémon. They found a man, Professor Seymour, who had built his life around a radical idea. He believed, with the earnest passion of a scientist on the edge of a breakthrough, that Clefairy were extraterrestrial. The mountain, he theorized, was not just a habitat, it was a landing site. The gathered Clefairy around the Moonstone weren't just grouping, they were answering a call. For many of us watching, this was the first time the idea moved from a fun fan theory to a tangible part of the story's fabric. And then, the anime gave us a scene that cemented it. A group of Clefairy, not building a nest, but meticulously gathering components. Not stealing, but salvaging. They were working to repair a damaged, saucer-like spaceship, their movements purposeful and coordinated. In that moment, every theft of a shiny object, every curious gathering, gained a new context. They weren't just being cute or mischievous. They might have been trying to go home. The gentle moon-linked folklore had evolved into a clear, if charmingly low-tech science fiction narrative. The games, however, took a slower path to confirmation. With the arrival of Generation 2 and the Johto region, we were given Cleffa. This even more diminutive, star-like form was the key. Later, Pokédex descriptions began to weave a tighter web. They spoke of Cleffa appearing in places where meteorites had fallen, of Clefairy and Clefable gathering in groups to watch meteor showers. The implication sharpened. This wasn't just a family that liked the moon. This was a family with a tangible, celestial migration pattern, drawn to debris from space. The line between folklore and fact began to blur, not with a big reveal, but with a slow accumulation of data points. Then, in the early 2000s, the franchise stopped whispering. It introduced an answer. Deoxys did not dance under the moon. It hurtled through the interstellar dark. Its origin story was not a myth, but a twisted biological fact. It began as a space-borne virus, an organic entity drifting for eons, until it encountered a laser beam from a passing satellite. The radiation didn't destroy it. It mutated it. It rewrote its structure, twisting it into something new, something that resembled the very chromosome of life itself. Where Clefairy was a mystery wrapped in moonlight, Deoxys was a hypothesis given form. Its name was a direct reference to DNA. Its shape could shift, a physical representation of genetic plasticity, a life form utterly divorced from terrestrial evolution. It wasn't hinting at an extraterrestrial origin. It was the extraterrestrial origin, made flesh and energy. The divide we'd been tracing, from the gentle implication of a moon dance to the hard confirmation of a mutagenic space virus, was now complete. So we are left with these two pillars of cosmic Pokémon lore. One is a soft mystery, a story of moonlight and meteors that grows richer with every retcon, inviting us to look up and wonder. The other is a stark science fiction reality, a being of pure, alien biology that challenges what we know about life in that digital world. They represent two fundamental ways to tell a story about the unknown: the quiet suggestion and the explicit revelation. Both paths lead us away from the familiar forests and caves and toward the vast, uncharted territory that exists beyond the atmosphere. And it is in that territory that the most powerful and primal of all Pokémon concepts reside, the legendary beings that shape reality itself. We ended the last chapter with a question, wondering if the alien mythology in Pokémon was always there, quietly woven into the foundation. To understand where that thread truly begins, we have to go back to the very start. Return with me to 1996, to the release of Red and Green in Japan. This was not a world of clear-cut science or confirmed extraterrestrial visitors. This was a world built from the ground up, on folklore, on urban legends, and on these strange biological hints that felt just a little bit off. The designers weren't pulling from hard sci-fi manuals. They were pulling from something older and more mysterious. Think about the original 151. Their designs borrowed from the animals we know, yes, but also from deep myth and from the fossil record. There's a lived-in, earthy quality to them. A Vulpix feels like it belongs in a Japanese folktale. A Ghastly feels like a ghost story. A Kabutops feels like a creature from a forgotten prehistoric age. The original games were rich with this sense of deep, embedded history, but they rarely offered you the complete story. They gave you a Pokédex entry, a piece of flavor text, and let the mystery do the rest. They trusted you to wonder, and there is no greater example of this than Clefairy. At first glance, it's just a cute, pink, fairy-like creature, but almost immediately, the game drops these breadcrumbs that something else is going on. You find it in Mount Moon, a place riddled with moonstones and fossil remnants. You evolve it not with experience, but with a moonstone, an object directly tied to the lunar cycle. Its Pokédex entries speak of it dancing in groups under the full moon, and of its strange, ring-like tail. The games never, in those first days, state where Clefairy comes from. Are they rare terrestrial animals? Magical beings? The unanswered questions baked into its very design made it far more mysterious than its cute appearance suggested. It was a creature of the earth, yes, but the game kept gently pushing you to look up at the moon and wonder. This ambiguity was fertile ground, and it was the early Pokémon anime that decided to water this particular seed and let it grow into something explicit. An early episode set in Mount Moon introduces a Professor Seymour, who presents his theory that Clefairy originated not on our planet, but in space. This idea was then expanded upon in a later special, which depicted Clefairy not as theoretical aliens, but as active ones. In that story, they were gathering items to rebuild a spaceship and return to their home among the stars. This was a bold, outright confirmation of extraterrestrial origins, and it took place in a completely different media from the games. For a generation of fans, this was the answer. Clefairy was the original alien Pokémon. Back in the games, however, the stance remained more poetic and less direct. The moon connection held strong. When Pokémon Gold and Silver were released, the lore around Clefairy's pre-evolution, Cleffa, deepened the mystery. The Pokédex suggested that Cleffa may have arrived on Earth by riding on meteorites, and that Clefairy and Clefable are drawn to meteor showers and impact sites. The signal was clearer now, but it was still a signal in the static. It was still association, not declaration. The games were saying, this creature is deeply, fundamentally linked to objects from beyond our world, without ever having a character sit you down and explain it. So for years, the idea of an alien Pokémon lived in two parallel tracks. The games offered a beautiful, ambiguous folklore, a creature of moonlight and meteorites. The anime offered a more literal, science fiction narrative, a creature that builds spaceships. Both were valid. Both shaped how we understood these pocket monsters. But the core identity of Pokémon lore, especially in the beginning, was this very duality. It was rooted in the unexplained, the mythological, the things that lived at the edge of what we knew. This careful balance began to shift as the franchise expanded. The idea of Pokémon originating from space was no longer just a theory about a single cute species. It became a more direct, more biological, and more dramatic concept. After years of hinting, the series would finally stop implying and start showing us, in clear and stunning detail, what a true alien Pokémon looks like. When Red and Green first sent trainers hiking through Kanto, they passed through a cave called Mount Moon. Most players saw it as a dungeon, a place for Zubat and Geodude. But look closer. This isn't just any mountain. Geologically, it's an impact site, a crater formed by a celestial collision ages ago. Its caverns aren't just hollowed rock, they're fossil beds, holding the preserved shells of ancient, extinct Pokémon, like the Helix and Dome fossils. And nestled deep within its core, a source of soft silver light, the Moonstone. The mountain's very name links it to the sky, and the rarest inhabitant of its tunnels is inextricably tied to that celestial image, Clefairy. Encountering one in the wild felt like finding a secret. They weren't common. Their animations, their soft cries, everything about them suggested something different, something shy and special. And there was a logic to their location. They gathered not in forests or rivers, but inside a scar left by something falling from the heavens. The connection becomes undeniable with their method of growth. To evolve a Clefairy into a Clefable, you need an item found not on a battlefield or in a shop, but hidden in the deepest reaches of this mountain, a Moonstone. It's a remarkable idea when you think about it, that a Pokémon's very biological progression, a step into a stronger form, could be triggered by a rare object associated with the moon. It's not about experience or battle, it's about encountering a piece of the sky. This began to paint a picture, one filled with implication. The mountain's origin, the fossils of things long gone, the light-giving stone at its heart, and this delicate, star-shaped creature that seemed drawn to it all. Clefairy were not presented as just another species to be caught. They felt like an anomaly, a piece of the puzzle that didn't quite fit the natural order of Kanto's other wildlife. They were ghosts in the machine of the world's biology, leaving a fundamental question hanging in the cavern air. Are they truly native to this mountain, this land, this planet? Or did they, like the stone they treasure and the crater they inhabit, simply fall from the moon? This mystery, buried in a cave in the first generation, would become the franchise's most enduring whisper of the extraterrestrial. And it was only the beginning, because while the games left it as a tantalizing hint, other storytellers were about to take that whisper and turn it into a declaration. To find out where that declaration was made, we have to look not at what the Pokédex said, but at what the television screen showed. We began Mount Moon as a place of rock and shadow, but its greatest secret isn't buried in the cavern floors. It's held in the strange, luminous stone that some Clefairy are drawn to, the Moonstone. In a world where most Pokémon grow stronger through the sheer effort of battle, or by an internal change triggered by an item like a Firestone, the method of evolution for Clefairy was something else entirely. It wasn't a biological push from within. It was a response to something from above. When a Clefairy is exposed to the Moonstone, it doesn't just get stronger. It transforms. Its form becomes more complex, more radiant, its pink fur deepening. This isn't a metamorphosis that follows the rules of nature with, say, a Bulbasaur evolving into an Ivysaur. That process feels like growth, a predetermined biological blueprint unfolding. The Moonstone evolution feels like an infusion, a channeling of a dormant, cosmic potential. The stone acts as a key, unlocking a new state of being that was always there, waiting for the right celestial alignment. This singular mechanism became the defining trait of the line, more than any attack or habitat preference. The Moonstone was their signature. This immediately set them apart. Other Pokémon linked to stones, like Vulpix or Eevee, have multiple evolutionary paths, or are tied to elemental forces of the earth. The Clefairy line had one dedicated stone, and its name and associations pointed to one source, the Moon. And the connection only deepened when we met its pre-evolution, Cleffa. Introduced later, Cleffa was described as a star baby, appearing in the wake of meteor showers. So now you had this chain, a being that might fall from the sky like a meteorite, who, under the light of the moon, could transform into something ancient and powerful. The lore wasn't just hinting at an unusual biology, it was painting a picture of a lineage with extraterrestrial roots. Clefairy living in a mountain that might be an ancient impact site, and Clefable's elegant crescent moon tail. The symbolism was potent. When the fairy type was introduced much later, Clefable was a natural fit. Its moon-drenched magic and ethereal presence didn't need a radical redesign. The typing simply codified what had been suggested for decades. This was a creature of wonder, not of the earth. Yet, for all these carefully laid clues, the games themselves never made an official, explicit declaration. No NPC ever turned to the player and said, Clefairy are aliens from another planet. The Pokédex speaks of meteorites, of lunar dances, of rare celestial events. It presents a mystery and invites you to connect the dots. The anime, of course, took those dots and drew a very direct line, presenting Professor Seymour's theory and the entire Spaceship storyline as near fact. But within the game's own canon, Clefairy remained in a state of beautiful, tantalizing ambiguity. They are creatures the moon, perhaps. But were they the moon? The official text left that question ringing in the silence between the lines, letting fans fill in the cosmic blank. This careful distinction is crucial. The Clefairy line represents Pokémon's early approach to the extraterrestrial theme, a slow, poetic suggestion built from mechanics, location, and fragmented lore. It made the idea feel like an urban legend you might discover, a secret hidden in the game's own code. It was folkloric, mystical, but as the franchise grew, the nature of that cosmic mystery would begin to change. The whispers and moonbeams would eventually be joined by something far more direct, a story told not in ancient myths, but in the cold, clear language of science fiction. The Moonstone felt like the end of the puzzle, a beautiful symbolic key to Clefairy's evolution. But it was really just the beginning of a much stranger story, because once you move past the stone itself, you start to notice that Clefairy isn't just rare, It's peculiar. It's a creature that seems to exist just outside the boundaries of the normal world. Think about where you find it. Not in a forest, not by a river. You find it on the peak of Mount Moon, a place that feels more like a monument to the sky than a mountain. It's an impact site, a place where the earth was shaped by something from above. The rest of Kanto's common Pokémon, the Pidgey, the Rattata, the Oddish, they belong to their environments. They feel like natural parts of the ecosystem. Clefairy feels deposited. It's clinging to this one, specific, celestial location, as if it needs the thin air and the moonlight to feel at home. And its behavior matches its habitat. It's not a social creature. You don't stumble upon a herd of Clefairy grazing in a meadow. Encounters are solitary, or in very small, secretive groups. They're known for their graceful, rhythmic dancing under the full moon, a ritual that feels less like animal behavior and more like a ceremony. It's this mix of profound rarity and deliberate, almost occult activity that creates the first ripple of unease. You're not just finding a rare Pokémon, you're intruding on something private and precise. Then there's the design itself. Look at it. It's the epitome of cute. Rosy pink cheeks, a soft, rounded body, a charmingly stubby tail. It's a creature that should belong on a child's lunchbox. This is the first great deception of the Clefairy line. Its appearance promises innocence, but its context whispers of something else entirely. That's the uncanny valley of Pokémon design, when something so adorable is found only in places steeped in lunar mystery, performing moonlit dances. Your brain starts to ask questions. Why is this creature here, and not in a flower field? The cuteness becomes a mask, and you can't help but wonder what it's hiding. The original games never gave a straight answer, the Pokédex hinted. It spoke of Clefairy's movements becoming elegant under the moon, of its rarity, but it let your imagination fill in the blanks. It framed the mystery as folklore. But then, the anime decided to pull back the curtain. In an early episode set on Mount Moon, a researcher named Professor Seymour laid out a bold theory. He didn't just think Clefairy was moon-themed, he theorized it was from the moon, an extraterrestrial visitor. This wasn't subtle speculation. The story that followed took it even further. We saw Clefairy not as a native creature, but as a refugee. They were collecting items, trinkets from trainers, not out of mischief, but to repair a broken spaceship hidden in the caves. The goal was simple and heartbreaking, to rebuild their ship and return home. Suddenly, the dancing, the isolation, the lunar connection, it all snapped into focus. They weren't just moon-loving, they were moon-dwelling. The cute, pink creature was an alien, and its cheerful demeanor was the last thing you'd expect from a stranded castaway from the stars. This is the core tension the Clefairy line established for the franchise. It mastered the art of hiding a deep, cosmic secret behind a veil of adorable normalcy. It proved that in the world of Pokémon, the most extraordinary secrets could be worn on a smiling, pink face. The mystery of their origin, whether from the moon, from meteorites, or from deep space, was never fully closed in the games. It remained a beautiful, lingering question. And that question, that legacy of the cute alien, created a pathway. It showed that the idea of Pokémon not being entirely of this earth wasn't just a fan fantasy. It was a foundational myth, waiting to be explored further. The franchise had planted the seed of extraterrestrial wonder with a dancing creature on a mountaintop. The next step would be to take that idea, shed the ambiguity, and launch it into the cold, clear vacuum of hard science fiction. So while we've been examining Clefairy's strange placement in the Kanto ecosystem, a quieter source of evidence was beginning to build, not in the wild, but in the pages of the Pokédex itself. And what makes this so fascinating is that the device doesn't give us a straight answer. It starts whispering. It drops fragments that, when connected, paint a picture far more cosmic than any mountain cave could contain. The first hints come with the baby Pokémon, Cleffa. This is where the explicit extraterrestrial language first appears in the game's official lore. The Pokédex entries describe it as a Pokémon that is sometimes seen on nights when there are meteor showers. The phrasing is crucial. It doesn't say Cleffa is a meteorite, it says it is seen. The association is immediate and powerful, linking this tiny star-shaped creature to a celestial event. Another entry states that many astronomers believe it to be the child of a shooting star. Again, it's not a fact presented as truth, but a belief held by people within the world. It's hearsay recorded in a scientific device. The whisper has begun. When you look at the data for Clefairy and Clefable, the whispers grow slightly louder, but they remain ambiguous. The entries no longer just note their presence near celestial events. They begin to tie them to specific locations. It's noted that Clefairy and Clefable have been seen gathering near places where meteorites have fallen. They don't live there, necessarily, but this is suggestive language, not declarative. It creates a mood, an unexplained connection. The entries also firmly attach them to the moon, stating they become active on nights with a full moon, and that they are said to have arrived on the moon long ago. Said to have arrived. That's the key phrase. It's presenting a legend, a piece of folklore, but within the context of a creature's biological profile. So, what the Pokédex is doing here is acting as a profoundly unreliable witness. It isn't stating a clear biological fact, like Clefairy evolves using a moonstone. Instead, it's compiling urban legends, scientific speculation, and observed behavioral patterns into its database. It gives you fragments, a gathering place, a nocturnal cycle, a popular belief, correlation with falling rocks from the sky. It never connects the dots with a firm conclusion. It simply leaves the dots on the page for you, the trainer, to interpret. This is a world away from how later Pokédex entries would describe Pokémon like Deoxys. With the space virus, the entries are clear, clinical, and rooted in a sci-fi reality. They talk about a mutated virus, laser exposure, and DNA. The mystery is solved before you even read it. But with the Cleffa line, the mystery is the entire point. The Pokédex doesn't confirm the extraterrestrial theory. It just strengthens the circumstantial case, entry by entry, building a case file of anomalies. It makes the idea feel earned, like something you uncover through the clues, rather than something you're simply told. This method of storytelling is so effective because it respects the player's intelligence. It invites you to play detective with the lore. Each new piece of information, the meteorite connection, the lunar behavior, the ancient myths, adds another layer to the possibility. It transforms Clefairy from a simple, rare monster into a walking question mark. The final entry for Clefable notes its shyness and tendency to live quietly on large mountains, a mundane detail that, when placed alongside all the cosmic whispers, feels like a deliberate act of hiding. Hiding what exactly? The Pokédex doesn't say. It just presents the quiet life of the Clefable alongside the legend of its star-born origins, and lets the contradiction hum in the background. It's this slow, suggestive build-up that makes the Clefairy line such a lasting enigma. The franchise never pulls the curtain back entirely in the games. It lets the Pokédex whisper just enough to keep the idea of alien origins alive, not as a hard fact, but as a persistent, beautiful myth. And that myth would soon find its fullest expression, not in a data log, but in the visual storytelling of the anime. The later Pokédex entries started painting a very specific picture. They connected Clefairy and Clefable to moonlight, yes, but also to meteorites and impact sites. This built a layer of celestial mystery on top of their strange habitat. But the real turning point in the evidence wasn't about Clefairy itself. It came with the discovery of its pre-evolution, Cleffa. When Cleffa was first documented, it fundamentally changed the argument. For years, the idea that Clefairy might be extraterrestrial was just that, a theory supported by cryptic habitat data and some suggestive anime storylines. But Cleffa, this tiny star-shaped Pokémon, appeared to be the crucial evolutionary link. It wasn't just a baby form. Its very existence was a new piece of biological evidence that made the alien theory much harder to dismiss as mere speculation. The key detail is where and how Cleffa is found. The research indicates that Cleffa may not arrive on our mountains through ordinary migration or hatching. Instead, it is associated with meteorite impacts. The claim is that Cleffa itself might arrive on Earth riding on meteorites. Think about that for a moment. We're not just talking about a Pokémon that lives near where space rocks land. The implication is that this creature's initial arrival is tied to objects from space. It is in essence a delivery. This changes everything about how we interpret Clefairy's story. Before Cleffa, you could argue Clefairy's connection to the Moonstone and Mount. Moon was symbolic. It was an association, a theme of lunar mysticism. But a pre-evolution that arrives via meteorite, that isn't symbolism. That's a biological origin story. It suggests the entire evolutionary line didn't gradually develop on Earth and then come to live under the Moon's influence. Instead, the starting point, the most vulnerable and basic stage of the cycle, literally fell from the sky. The presence of Cleffa reframes Clefairy, not as a creature of the Moon, but as the offspring of something that made a violent journey through space. It shifts the narrative from lunar to interstellar. Clefairy's gathering at Mount Moon might not be a pilgrimage to a sacred site, but an instinct to return to the initial point of impact, a geological memory of their species' cataclysmic arrival. Their moonlight behaviour could be a residual attraction to the light that guided them here, or perhaps just a preference for the cold, dark conditions that mirror the void they travelled through. So when you look at Clefairy now, after knowing about Cleffa, the story feels different. The moon is still important, but it might be a secondary symbol. The primary story is one of panspermia, of life delivered by rock and fire. Clefairy may not be moonborn at all. It may be the descendant of something that travelled through the vast emptiness of space, riding a meteor to a new home. And if its beginnings are that literal and that cosmic, it opens the door for the franchise to explore the alien sonst in a much more direct and biological way, moving from implied folklore into the realm of science fiction. That thread of meteorite dust, tying a tiny pre-evolution to cosmic impact sites, was about to be pulled into a much more direct narrative. Because while the games were still trading in ambiguous Pokédex whispers, another medium was preparing to say what the text only hinted at. The Pokémon anime in its first season would take those scattered clues, the Moonstone, the mountain habitat, the association with celestial objects, and dramatize them into a bold, spoken hypothesis. It happened on the journey through Mount Moon. The anime didn't just show a cavern full of rock-type Pokémon and Clefairy. It staged a mystery. The characters met Professor Seymour, a researcher embedded in the mountain, and he articulated a theory that the games never stated so plainly. He suggested that Clefairy were not native to Earth at all. His proposal was that these creatures had arrived from outer space, possibly using the Moonstones as some form of catalyst or energy source. The episode even depicted a plot where Clefairy were gathering materials to repair what looked like a small spacecraft, planning to return to their celestial home. This was a fundamental shift in storytelling. The games provided the puzzle pieces. A rare stone that evolves a rare Pokémon, found in a cave with impact craters, with later lore linking its infant form to meteorites. But the anime grabbed those pieces and assembled them into a clear picture on the wall. It transformed scattered text-based clues into a spoken, character-driven hypothesis. Professor Seymour became the voice for what many players might have already wondered. His theory wasn't presented as absolute fact within the show's world, but it was presented as a compelling, credible explanation from a scientist within that world. More importantly, this moment did something profound for the franchise's lore. It began the process of rewriting fan interpretation. The anime wasn't merely illustrating the games, it was offering a strong, narrative-driven interpretation of their ambiguities. For countless viewers who watched that episode, Clefairy wasn't just a mysterious moon-linked Pokémon anymore, it was the alien Pokémon. The anime gave definitive shape to a ghost of an idea, and that shape was extraterrestrial. It demonstrated how a different medium could take a vague concept and lock it into the public consciousness with far more boldness than the source material's careful, suggestive wording ever did. This set a crucial precedent. It established that the spaces between the game's explicit statements were fertile ground for the franchise's own evolving mythos. The anime could and would push the boundaries of what Pokémon could be, starting with the very first generation's most enigmatic pink creature. It transformed Clefairy from a rare encounter into a potential visitor, and in doing so, began to build a bridge. It was a bridge connecting the folksy, impact site mysteries of the earliest games to the far more explicit science fiction ideas that would one day become central to the Pokémon universe. The idea that a Pokémon could be a literal organism from the stars was no longer just fan speculation whispered in forums. It was being animated, given dialogue, and woven into the journey of Ash Ketchum. This opening of the narrative floodgates, this willingness to lean into the cosmic horror and wonder of alien visitation, didn't stop with Clefairy. That bridge had been built, and on the other side, in the distant future of the franchise, something far more sophisticated, far more biological, and far less friendly was waiting to cross it. So we're at the observation post near the entrance to Mount. Moon and Professor Seymour has just laid out his controversial theory to Ash and Misty. It's a theory that puts him squarely at odds with the entire established scientific community of the Pokémon world. He suggests, without any real peer-reviewed backing, that the Clefairy they've been studying did not originate on this planet, that they are, in fact, visitors from space. This is the heart of the investigation becoming a battle. On one side, you have the cautious, methodical approach of the mainstream, scientists who see a rare lunar-sensitive Pokémon and document its unique evolution via Moonstone. They note its preference for deep caverns and its mysterious nocturnal patterns. Their conclusion is one of terrestrial wonder, a creature tied to the moon's influence, but very much a part of this world's ecology. And on the other side, you have Professor Seymour, standing with his charts and his earnest, slightly dishevelled intensity. He points to the Moonstone, not as an evolutionary catalyst, but as a fragment of a missing key. He argues that Clefairy's coordinated, silent gatherings under the full moon aren't just behaviour, they're a ritual, a communication. He believes the rhythmic, unison movement of a Clefairy group isn't a dance, but a signal. And to a skeptic, it looks like magical thinking. To Seymour, it's the only logical explanation for something that refuses to be logical. The narrative thrill here isn't just that a professor believes in aliens, it's that he's willing to say it out loud. In a world where legendary Pokémon are still often dismissed as myths, to propose that a common, albeit rare, species is extraterrestrial is a profound act of scientific heresy. He's not whispering this in a private journal, he's presenting it to a child and his friend. Using the cave itself as his lecture hall, he's staking his entire credibility on a feeling, on observations that others dismiss as coincidence. And then Clefairy actually appears. The duo witnesses it firsthand. Under the wash of moonlight spilling into the cavern, they see the Clefairy emerge. They don't just dance, they move with a strange, collective purpose. Their eyes catch the light in a way that doesn't quite feel like reflection. It feels like absorption. To Ash and Misty, it's enchanting, display of pure, otherworldly magic. It's the kind of sight that makes you believe in fairy tales. But Seymour sees something else in that same display. He doesn't see magic. He sees a technology he doesn't understand. He interprets their silent communion as a form of data transfer. He views their gathering near a meteorite impact site like Mount Moon not as habitat selection, but as a return to a point of origin, or perhaps a beacon. The evidence is the same for everyone watching, but it splits down the middle. For one side, it confirms the mystical link to the moon. For Seymour, it confirms a journey through the stars. The moonlit behaviour is the ultimate Rorschach test. Do you see a beautiful, mystical Pokémon tied to celestial forces? Or do you see a lost astronaut coordinating with its kin under the only home light it knows. This moment crystallizes the entire conflict. The pursuit of truth in the Pokémon world often runs into this wall, the point where empirical data ends and extraordinary interpretation begins. Seymour stands on that precipice, and he jumps. His theory is impossible by every metric of known biology, and yet, watching the Clefairy, you feel the pull of his logic. He's not necessarily a fool. He's a visionary operating without a map. The question he leaves us with isn't whether Clefairy are aliens. It's a deeper one about the nature of discovery itself. Is the greatest scientific mind the one who adheres strictly to the known, or the one who is willing to entertain the impossible until it proves itself? Seymour chose the latter, and for a fleeting moment in the moonlight of Mount Moon, that choice felt less like madness and more like the first step of a much larger journey, a journey that, in the years to come, would find its most definitive and undeniable proof not in the folklore of moon-dancing creatures, but in the cold alien biology of a virus from the void. The last time we were together, we stood on the summit of Mount Moon, caught between two explanations. On one side, Professor Seymour's cautious, textbook-bound skepticism. On the other, a handful of witnesses pointing to the sky, to the moonlight, and to a circle of Clefairy, whose behavior defied every conventional understanding of a Pokemon's life. The theory hung there, extraordinary and unproven. A whisper of the extraterrestrial attached to one of Kanto's most gentle, elusive creatures. The theory itself felt like it belonged to a different kind of story, one of science fiction rather than field ecology. And as it turned out, the franchise was about to agree by turning that whisper into the plot. The idea didn't stay locked in the speculative appendices of a researcher's notebook. It leaped, with a certain absurd grace, into the central narrative of the anime. This is where the theory of the alien Clefairy stopped being a curious footnote and became the engine of its own episode in a story called Clefairy Fables. The transition is crucial because it marks the moment the franchise took its own most persistent mystery and, instead of just hinting at it, committed to playing it out. The setup is at first pure comedic chaos. Ash and his friends arrive in a town where nothing seems to be where it belongs. Sparkly, valuable items are going missing everywhere. A ship's navigation computer vanishes from a workshop. Shiny hubcaps disappear right off a parked car. And even the local Pokémon Center's spare parts bin is cleaned out. The culprit, as they eventually discover, isn't a thief with a master plan, but a whole society of Clefairy. And what they're doing with these gleaming bits of technology, with wires, with metal plating, with any shiny or electronic object they can get their small hands on, is both baffling and, in a strange way, logical. They are gathering pieces for a spaceship. Here, the story's tone does something remarkable. It takes the solemn, moonlit mystery we'd been tracking, the eerie dances, the association with impact craters, the Pokédex hints, and places it inside a plot that is genuinely laugh-out-loud funny. Imagine a Clefairy stealthily unscrewing the antenna from a television, or a whole squadron of them trying to carry away a bicycle. The sight of these pink fairy tale creatures rummaging through a junkyard or pilfering a high-tech lab is classic slapstick. The episode leans into the absurdity of the situation, the comedic juxtaposition of the mundane and the magical. They're not just mysterious anymore. They're mischievous little tinkers, causing a very specific kind of town-wide panic. But underneath the comedy, a startling implication is being laid out with surprising seriousness. The Clefairy aren't just collecting shiny junk for a hoard. They have a schematic, a blueprint of sorts, for a machine they are trying to assemble. They are engaged in a project, and the purpose of that project, the reason for all this theft, is to repair a spacecraft. The idea moves from the realm of myth and folklore. Were they born from the moon? Into concrete, actionable science fiction. They are not just moon-linked, they are engineers, and their goal is to return home. The episode presents this not as a wild guess, but as a fact the characters must eventually accept. The ship in the clearing a patchwork of stolen parts and mysterious alien metal, is real. This is the anime's most consequential escalation of the idea. Before this, you could dismiss the Clefairy alien connection as a poetic metaphor, a way to explain their rarity and unusual power. After this episode, that becomes much harder. The theory, once advanced by a single, somewhat eccentric professor, is now visually and narratively confirmed within the show's own canon. The mystery is solved, and the solution is that they are literal extraterrestrials. But the story doesn't end with a triumphant launch into space. It ends with a deeper, more poignant realization. The Clefairy are not just visitors, they are stranded. The full weight of that hits when you see the scene. The spaceship, a cobbled-together vessel of both sleek, unknown metal and very terrestrial scrap, sits in a field. The Clefairy have gathered, their mission accomplished. They have repaired it. They are ready to go home. This is the emotional core of the episode, the moment the comedy falls away completely. Their dance isn't just a mating ritual or a display of psychic energy. It's a farewell to the world they've landed on. And if Ash and his friends hadn't been there, perhaps to themselves. They are not just moon Pokémon, they are castaways. The implications ripple outward. It reframes every piece of Pokédex lore we've considered. They don't gather at meteorites because they like the scenery. They might be salvaging, looking for parts, or tracking the arrival of other pieces of their own technology. Their connection to the moon isn't just symbolic. It's a navigational beacon, a reference point for a journey they were supposed to complete long ago. Their rarity isn't a quirk of ecology. It's the result of being a very small, isolated population, far from home, trying to rebuild what they've lost. The moonlit dances on Mount Moon now seem less like a mystical communion and more like a transmission, a signal to the empty sky. So, the franchise took its first great alien mystery, leaned fully into the most literal interpretation of it, and turned it into a story about loss, community, and the desperate, ingenious will to survive. The comedy of the theft is the surface. The truth of the spaceship is the foundation. They are not just a creature associated with space. They are a crew without a ship, living in a world that isn't theirs, trying to build a way out. And this narrative leap, this solidification of Clefairy as not just alien-coded, but actively alien, perfectly set the stage for the franchise to explore even more explicit, science-fictional interpretations of what a Pokémon from the stars could be. The mystery had a spaceship now. The next step was to imagine what might come out of deep space itself. That scene of Clefairy gathering parts, of building a ship under moonlight, is seared into the memory of an entire generation. But it raises a peculiar question. Why did this specific, very literal interpretation become the defining image of an alien Clefairy for so many people, when the games themselves remain so carefully, almost stubbornly, ambiguous? The answer lies in the fundamental difference between a Pokédex entry and a television episode. The game can tell you, in a line of text, that Cleffa may have arrived on a meteorite. It can describe Clefairy gathering near impacts. These are intriguing clues, suggestions of a mystery. But the anime showed you the conclusion. It gave you Professor Seymour's conviction. It dramatized the collection of machine parts. It provided a narrative with a clear goal and an emotional weight. Homesick creatures trying to return to the stars. A Pokédex offers a fact, a story offers a feeling. And humans, we are storytelling creatures first. We remember images and motives far more vividly than we remember data points. When you see a Clefairy arranging circuits and stealing silver, you're not just learning a fact about its origin. You're witnessing a character arc. That visual narrative creates a memory that feels like fact, even if it exists solely within the bounds of a separate, non-game continuity. The anime didn't just suggest aliens, it showed you the aliens at work. This creates a fascinating schism in the collective memory of the fandom. For years, and even today, many fans will cite the spaceship episode as proof positive of Clefairy's extraterrestrial nature, almost forgetting that the source material it's based on, the games, never actually confirms it. They blend the mediums. the animated story becomes the canonical memory, superseding the textual hint. It's a powerful testament to how visual storytelling shapes belief. So, this leaves us with a question that follows this entire investigation like a shadow. When we talk about Pokémon lore, what do we actually mean? Are we talking about the carefully seeded ambiguities of the game developers, the literal stories told on television, or the blended version that lives in our collective imagination? Which version do we, as an audience, choose to believe? The next step for the franchise was to stop implying and start declaring, build a creature on pure, undisguised extraterrestrial biology. That required a jump from folklore to science fiction. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. The previous chapter explained how television gave the Clefairy story a sense of motive and emotion that the game's text couldn't. But it didn't just give us a story, it gave us a feeling. It turned a speculative theory into a personality, and that personality was above all else funny. Think about what we saw. A Clefairy isn't a sleek, intelligent ambassador or a terrifying invader. It's a bumbling, dancing, smack-talking little creature. Its idea of an advanced interstellar project involves stealing a wrench and hiding under a hat. The special effects are all wobble and sparkle, not cold, hard technology. This is the genius of how Pokémon presents its extraterrestrials. It dresses the cosmic in the clothes of the comedic. The unusual power here lies in slapstick, dancing, and a kind of childlike mischief. It's a presentation strategy that makes the alien theory feel approachable, even endearing, rather than something to fear. This approach does something profound to the underlying concept. We've been talking about moonstones and meteorites, about creatures that may not belong here, that could easily slide into horror. The idea of a silent, watching entity from the void is a staple of scary stories. But Clefairy isn't that. It trips, it poses, it gets distracted. Spaceship is a collection of shiny junk. By wrapping the extraterrestrial hypothesis in this layer of comedy, the franchise disarms the potential dread. It lets us entertain the possibility that life could come from the stars without requiring us to feel threatened by it. The mystery becomes a playful puzzle, not a looming nightmare. This works because of a brilliant visual and behavioral contrast. Consider the silhouette, round pink with stubby arms and a curled tail. It's a shape designed for plush toys, for birthday cakes, for merchandise. It screams mascot, yet the lore whispers, very quietly, that this familiar, friendly form might be a visitor. The dissonance is the point. The cuddly exterior, and our brains categorize it as safe and known. But the evidence, the moonstones, the impact sites, the anime's entire plot, suggests an origin utterly unknown. That tension is captivating. It allows for a depth of lore beneath a surface that invites everyone in. In the end, this is why the alien mythology in Pokémon often succeeds so well. It's an exercise in hiding cosmic horror inside a mascot. The horror isn't the alien itself, but the vast, unsettling implications of what that alien represents. That we are not alone, that the universe is stranger than we know, that something utterly other can look at you with a cute face and a twinkle in its eye. The comedy is the sugarcoating. It makes the big scary idea of panspermia go down easy. It turns a potential invasion into a misunderstood neighbour. And this duality, this skill at blending the mundane with the mythical, didn't stop with Clefairy. The franchise would later find a way to express the alien concept with less comedy and more clinical awe, moving from the playful folklore of the moon to the hard science of the cosmos. And while the anime gave us a definitive, if playful, answer, the games themselves took a different path. They chose to build a cathedral of ambiguity. So, let's go back to the source, back to the text on the screen, and separate what the games actually show us from the powerful story our collective imagination has filled in. The most concrete clue in the early games isn't a spaceship or a theory, it's stone. the Moonstone, found deep within Mount Moon. This item triggers Clefairy's evolution into Clefable. The connection is immediate and visual. You find it in a place named for the moon, and you use it on a creature whose name is a play on fairy and moon. The implication is a lunar link, a cosmic catalyst for change. It suggests Clefairy aren't just the moon, that somehow it, or at least attuned to its power, that the games never say from, they say associated with. As new entries were added, like the baby Cleffa, the web of association grew more specific. Later Pokédex entries would state that Cleffa are sometimes found in the aftermath of a meteor shower. They note that Clefairy and Clefable too are seen gathering at sites where meteorites have fallen. This isn't just moon symbolism anymore. It's a direct tie to objects arriving from space. These habitats, and Moon, the impact craters of later games, are not their ordinary home. They are places of arrival, of impact, of mystery. This is where we have to be careful. The games present these associations, but they don't build the causal chain that the anime did. They don't show us a Clefairy building a ship. They give us the poetic suggestion. A creature drawn to moonlight, evolving under the influence of a fallen moonstone, found where rocks from the sky strike the earth. It paints a picture, but it's a picture with the most important brushstrokes left to us. The tone is everything. The game lore leans into words like mystical, rare, and powerful. It frames their behavior around the moon as a natural, if magical, phenomenon. A moonstone might simply be a powerful mineral that resonates with their biology, not a piece of their home world. Meteorites might be a fascinating curiosity they're drawn to, not evidence of their own arrival. The games preserve every possibility with equal weight. Maybe they were born from the moon's influence. Maybe they arrived on a meteorite eons ago. Maybe they are purely terrestrial beings with a deep magical connection to celestial bodies. Or maybe, as some in-game folklore might suggest, they are simply a wonderfully misunderstood species that has inspired moon myths for centuries. This isn't a gap in the storytelling, it's the very heart of it. The deliberate ambiguity is a feature. It allows the Pokémon world to feel both wondrous and scientifically plausible. It lets a Clefairy be a mystical guardian of the mountain one moment, and a potential extraterrestrial visitor the next, all within the same established canon. The games give you the symbols, the moon, the falling star, the rare creature, and trust you to weave the narrative that feels right. That's why the fan theories could take root so deeply. The games provided the perfect, fertile soil of suggestion, but never picked the fruit for us. It created a legacy where the idea of an alien Pokémon was a slow-building mystery, hinted at through lunar patterns and stony souvenirs from the sky. It took a special kind of creature, one that could stretch its biology to encompass starlight and cosmic dust, to eventually give the franchise an answer that was less about implication and more about identification. A creature not just to space, but fundamentally of its processes. So, if the games won't give us a straight answer, what are we left with? We're left with a debate. A wonderful three-sided debate that has evolved right alongside the Pokémon themselves. It's a question that has lived in the shadows of Mount Moon and the light of the Pokédex for decades. Where does the Clefairy line truly come from? The community has largely settled on three possible answers, each with its own weight of evidence and its own flavour of charm. The first and perhaps most enduring is the lunar theory. This is the one written into the very fabric of the games. It's there in the name Moonstone, the item that triggers Clefairy's transformation. It's there in the geography, with the line's strong association to Mount Moon, a location whose name is as literal as it gets. The theory suggests a deep mystical bond with our moon. It posits that Clefairy are creatures of lunar cycles and moonlight, that their evolution is tied to celestial rhythms we don't fully understand. Their love of dancing under the full moon isn't just quirky behaviour, it's a ritual. Their origin isn't necessarily from the moon in a physical sense, but their essence is lunar. This theory keeps them grounded in a kind of magical terrestrial folklore. Then you have the meteorite, theory. This one takes the extraterrestrial hint and runs with it, right back to the stars. This interpretation leans heavily on the later Pokédex entries and world building that place Cleffa in the blast zones of meteorite impacts. In this view, the entire evolutionary family are travelers. Cleffa are the first scouts to arrive on a rock of cosmic debris, drawn to the energy of the impact site. They grow into Clefairy, and under the right conditions, into Clefable, all while staying close to these cosmic breadcrumbs. Here, their connection to Mount Moon isn't just about the moon. It's because that mountain is a place where things from the sky have fallen. This theory treats them as gentle aliens, biological immigrants, who found a home in a specific, special habitat on our planet. And that leaves the third, more enigmatic option, the mythic theory. This is the path of least physical assumption. It allows Clefairy to be supernatural without needing a spaceship or a meteorite. Under this lens, Clefairy is a creature of profound, inexplicable magic. Their association with the moon and stars isn't about origin, but about affinity. They are drawn to celestial power, and they channel it. Their dances might summon cosmic energy. Their songs might affect the tides. Not because they are made of star stuff, but because they are spirits deeply attuned to it. This theory keeps them firmly in the realm of the wondrous and the unknown, a native myth rather than an imported species. The beauty is that the franchise has never forced us to choose. The games have always provided just enough evidence to support all three. A moonstone suggests lunar power. A meteorite in a Pokédex entry suggests a cosmic arrival. A dance that seems to warp reality suggests pure myth. This ambiguity is the core of the mystery. It's what allowed the anime to take one path, the meteorite one, and make it so vivid and memorable that it became the dominant fan theory for a generation. The show didn't just hint at an extraterrestrial origin, it staged it, giving Clefairy a motive, a mission, and a destination. But the games, ever cautious, continued to present the question, not the answer. This careful balancing act, this slow drip feed of cosmic hints, set the stage perfectly for what was to come. The franchise had spent years perfecting the art of the maybe alien. It had built an entire legacy on a cute pink creature that might or might not have fallen from the sky. Then in Generation 3, it decided to stop being ambiguous. It was time to show what a truly confirmed alien Pokémon looked like. The lunar connection was compelling, the meteorite theory was intriguing, and the mythic interpretation had its own quiet power. But for a lot of fans, sitting with all three options side by side wasn't satisfying. It was a starting point. When a story gives you pieces but not the picture, it doesn't always lead to confusion. Often it sparks a hunt. Pokémon, in its early days, was masterful at leaving these kinds of threads dangling. A Pokédex entry would drop a single curious fact. An in-game location would suggest a history. The anime would then come along and dramatize one possibility, so vividly it became unforgettable. This kind of incomplete lore does something special to an audience. It transforms passive consumers into active participants. You become a detective. The mystery of Clefairy's origin wasn't a puzzle the developers had to solve for us. By leaving it open, they invited us to solve it together. So the investigation began, not with a central hub, but across a sprawling landscape of media. A dedicated fan would read the text in their game. Clefairy are beloved by tourists that visit Mount Moon. Okay, they'd remember the anime episode where Professor Seymour presented his wild theory about Clefairy coming from the stars. They'd see another episode where those same pink Pokémon were literally stealing parts to fix a spaceship. Then they'd connect it to the fact that you only found moonstones in that specific mountain, place named for the moon. They'd note that later games would explicitly tie the baby form, Cleffa, to sites where meteorites fall. None of these clues on their own was a smoking gun. The games never came out and said, Clefairy are extraterrestrials. The anime is a separate continuity. Moonstones are just an item. But the theory gained its strength from the convergence. It felt more convincing because the evidence wasn't isolated. It originated across multiple forms of Pokémon media. The games provided the physical, ecological hints. The anime provided the visual, emotional narrative. When you saw the same idea reflected in different facets of the same universe, it began to feel less like a coincidence and more like a truth the franchise was hinting at from different angles. This collective detective work is how a fan consensus forms without official decree. One person connects the Moonlight evolution to the spaceship repair. Another finds a Pokédex entry about meteor showers and links it to an anime scene. Slowly a mosaic assembles. The pieces were always there, scattered across cartridges, television screens, and strategy guides. Fans just became skilled at arranging them. This process gave the theory a grassroots credibility. It wasn't handed down. It was built up, fan by fan, connection by connection. By the time the franchise introduced a Pokémon that was unequivocally, scientifically, and biologically alien, the groundwork had already been laid. The conversation had shifted from could they be to we know some are. The persistent, ambiguous mystery of Clefairy created a space where a more explicit answer could eventually land with incredible impact. It prepared the audience to accept that in the world of Pokémon, the extraordinary isn't just a rumour whispered in a cave. It can be a matter of cosmic genetic fact. That kind of detective work, piecing together Pokédex entries and anime episodes, doesn't end with Clefairy. It's actually a doorway into a much wider cosmic family. The moon and stars are a canvas for the franchise, and other Pokémon step into that frame. Think of Jigglypuff, whose song Under the Moonlight feels almost otherworldly, or the strange, silent presence of Bronzong, a bell that seems to hum with forgotten celestial knowledge. But two Pokémon stand out for how directly they embody celestial bodies. Lunatone and Solrock aren't just found near impact sites. They are the moon and sun made flesh, or rather, made of ancient stone. Their designs are striking in their simplicity, a crescent, star, but their lore adds a layer of mystery. They are said to have fallen from the sky as meteorites, waking only when a solar or lunar eclipse occurs. They feel less like biological creatures and more like symbols, ancient and unwavering, representing the duality of day and night. Then there's Starmie, the dual Pokémon, whose crystalline body rotates and emits a strange, mysterious light. Its Pokédex entries are filled with talk of unknown signals and cosmic rays. It's not just its appearance, it's its behaviour. Starmie seems to be constantly transmitting, a living beacon from the depths of space. It's a Pokémon that doesn't just live in our world. It seems to be listening to, or communicating with, something far beyond it. Now it's important to note that not every Pokémon tied to the sky is necessarily an alien. Many, like Lunatone and Solrock, are deeply woven into the mythology and ecology of the Pokémon world. Their celestial connections are part of their identity, but not always evidence of an extraterrestrial origin. What they do, however, is broaden the franchise's cosmic vocabulary. They add layers, themes, and a sense of scale that reaches beyond the forests and cities into the vast unknown above. And as we look up at these starry designs, the conversation inevitably shifts to the ones that feel less like myth and more like science fiction, to the Pokémon whose very biology seems crafted in a lab or from the cold vacuum of space itself. So we've looked at the symbolic and celestial designs, the Lunatones and Solrocks, that seem like living monuments to the sky. But what happens when the setting itself isn't just inspired by the cosmos, but is the cosmos? What changes when we step beyond the familiar forests, oceans and caves of the Pokémon world and into the vacuum of outer space itself? This shift doesn't just offer a new backdrop. It fundamentally alters the kinds of stories we can tell and the origins we can imagine. It turns the source of mystery from a moonlit ruin into a fragment of another world. Think about how traditional lore works. An ancient ruin or a forbidden laboratory tells a story of the past. They are terrestrial places, built by people or shaped by known energies, holding secrets from history. But a meteorite isn't a ruin. It's an intruder. It's a piece of the void that has impacted our reality. In Pokémon lore, places like Mount Moon aren't just caves. They are impact sites, gathering points for Clefairy drawn to these fallen stones. The meteorite becomes the equivalent of the forbidden laboratory. Not a place where science was performed, but a scientific anomaly itself, a source of strange power and even stranger life. Cosmic radiation isn't just an environmental hazard, it's a mutagen, a transformative force akin to the radiations of fictional labs, but originating from a completely alien source. This is where the concept of space as a habitat becomes two distinct, powerful ideas. On one hand, it is a birthplace. It suggests that certain Pokémon are not of this world in the first place. Their origin is extraterrestrial, and they arrived here via cosmic delivery. This is the fairy tale mystery of the Clefairy line, amplified. The early games hinted at it with moonstones and rare sightings near impact craters. But it was the anime that leaned into the myth, depicting Clefairy as beings who came from the moon, even showing them working to repair a spaceship to return home. The games kept a careful ambiguity, suggesting a connection to the moon and meteorites without outright stating their origin was alien. It was a profound, wonderful maybe. But then, the franchise made the leap from fairy tale to science fiction. Deoxys is the moment the story changed. Deoxys isn't hinted to be from space through habitat or evolutionary items. Its origin story is pure, explicit sci-fi. The lore is direct. It began as a virus traveling through the cosmos, mutated by exposure to a laser upon reaching Earth. It is living crystallized DNA from another star system. Its very name is a nod to deoxyribonucleic acid. With Deoxys, space is no longer just a mysterious source of arrivals. It is an active engine of creation through mutation. It is both birthplace and laboratory. The radiation didn't just shape Deoxys. Its cosmic origin is fundamental to its very biological identity, allowing it to reshape its own body in ways that feel alien to the terrestrial Pokémon we know. This progression shows how Pokémon storytelling evolved. The Clefairy mystery used the moon and space as a symbol, a folklore element to spark imagination. It was a gentle, ambiguous introduction to the idea that not everything fits neatly into the natural world we know. Then Deoxys used space as a literal scientific concept. It employed the real astronomical ideas of panspermia, the notion that life can travel between worlds on asteroids, and viral mutation to craft a creature that is alien in the truest sense. The moonlit mystery became a deep space odyssey of biology. So, the Pokémon world's ecologists and storytellers have, over time, expanded their toolkit. They've moved from mapping new caves and forests to mapping the stars, looking not just for where Pokémon live, but for where they might have come from, and what forces out in the dark between worlds might still be reshaping life itself. This opens up a universe of possibilities, where understanding a Pokémon's nature might mean looking up, past the atmosphere, to trace a lineage that began not on a mountain or in an ocean, but on a distant, silent star. When we last explored this mystery, we were thinking about space not as a distant backdrop, but as a kind of habitat, a place Pokémon could come from, not just look at. We talked about meteorites as a form of ancient ruin, and cosmic radiation as a source of power. It set a stage. And then, 6 years after Pokémon Red and Blue first asked us to wonder about Clefairy's connection to the moon, a new game arrived that didn't just add to the stage. It kicked the set apart. It turned back to the familiar grounds of Kanto. But something small had been planted there, a new piece of evidence that would change the entire case. That game was Pokémon Gold and Silver. Returning to Kanto in those games was like walking through a memory, but with sharper eyes. You could revisit Mount Moon, that early cathedral of mystery where so many players first caught a Clefairy. But now, the encounter tables were different. There was a new resident in those caverns, a tiny baby form that many trainers had never seen. This was Cleffa, and Cleffa's Pokédex entry was a revelation. It didn't just describe a cute star-shaped Pokémon, it offered a startling hypothesis. It suggested that Cleffa may have arrived on this planet from space long ago, riding on meteorites. Suddenly, the timeline was rewritten. This wasn't just about the moon anymore. This was about objects falling from the heavens, carrying life with them. The pre-evolution, the very beginning of the evolutionary line, was now being framed as a celestial immigrant. This is how pre-evolution lore can completely revise the perceived history of an entire family. When the baby form arrives carrying the baggage of extraterrestrial origins, it recasts everything that comes after it. Clefairy, which you evolve with a moonstone, now has a potential origin story that begins not on the moon, but in the cold, streaking trail of a falling star. Clefable, the final majestic form, becomes the potential adult descendant of this cosmic traveller. The entire family tree is suddenly rooted not in some terrestrial forest, but in the implications of interstellar arrival. The games were being very deliberate about this. It wasn't just Cleffa. The lore began to consistently tie the entire Clefairy line to very specific, non-ordinary locations. Not grasslands, not caves for the sake of caves, but places of cosmic impact. Meteor showers were noted as a time when these Pokémon might appear. Impact sites, the very craters where a space rock would strike the Earth, became their haunts. These aren't random ecological niches. This is environmental storytelling, using the game world itself to leave a clue. The Clefairy family doesn't just live near these places. The lore suggests they are drawn to them, as if answering a call from above. This was a significant deepening of the original mystery from the first games. Red and blue had given us lunar symbolism, a moonstone, and a mountain named for the moon. It was evocative, but still firmly tethered to a known celestial body. Gold and silver, through Cleffa, pointed the finger outward, past the moon, into the vast and violent ballet of the solar system's debris. The source was no longer just a poetic satellite. It was a physical interstellar object that had, at some point in the distant past, slammed into the Earth. So what does this do to the simple idea that Clefairy is just a rare, moon-loving creature? It complicates it significantly. The ordinary ecological explanation that this is simply a species adapted to high-altitude, moonlit environments starts to strain. Why would its pre-evolution carry the genetic memory or the behavioral instinct of a meteorite origin? Why are its habitats so specifically tied to places of cosmic collision? The details from Gold and Silver didn't provide a definitive, final answer, but they shifted the balance of the argument. The mystery didn't get smaller, it got deeper and more unsettling. It painted a picture of a Pokémon whose life cycle is intertwined with the cosmos in a way that feels less like natural selection and more like a legacy that begins with fire and impact, not with a slow terrestrial evolution. The feeling you're left with is that the Clefairy line's origin is becoming harder and harder to explain as just another branch on the tree of earthly life. The roots seem to extend upwards and back into the dark. When we last saw the Clefairy family, the introduction of Cleffa had deepened a decades-old question. That tiny, star-shaped Pokémon, arriving with a baby's cry in the games of 1999, didn't just give the Moonrock favourites a new beginning. It subtly shifted the entire conversation. The focus moved from a simple, "What are they?" to a more complex, "Where did they all come from? And what is the story of their journey?" This set the stage for the franchise to move from folklore toward something that felt a bit more like field science. In the earliest days, the language surrounding the Clefairy line was wrapped in mystery. The red and green games of 1996 presented them as strange, rare creatures found near Mount Moon. Their evolution via a moonstone was a symbolic clue, not a biological fact. Later Pokédex entries for Clefairy and Clefable spoke of them in terms of ritual and enchantment, as if they were sprites that danced under moonlight to complete some arcane purpose. The connection was to the moon, but it was a connection of myth. Then, as the series progressed, a fascinating shift occurred in how the games themselves talked about these Pokémon. Later Pokédex entries began to use more observational, almost ecological language. They noted that Cleffa are drawn to sites of meteoritic impacts, or that entire populations of Clefairy migrate to witness a lunar eclipse. The tone moved from "these creatures are mystical" to "we observe these creatures exhibiting these specific behaviors in relation to celestial events." The Pokédex, a supposed scientific catalogue, began to make folklore sound like rigorously documented field research. This was a subtle but powerful evolution. The franchise was showing, not just telling, that the alien quality of these Pokémon wasn't just a backstory. It was an observable phenomenon. The moon wasn't just a symbol. It was a destination, a beacon, a biological trigger. The questions were no longer just about magic, but about migration patterns, adaptive behaviors triggered by cosmic cycles, and the very origins of a species tied to the stars. The storytelling was growing up, and then the franchise took a definitive leap. If Clefairy represented the folklore era, the mystery hinted at through moonlight and stardust, then the arrival of Deoxys in 2002 marked the age of explicit cosmic biology. Deoxys didn't tiptoe around its extraterrestrial nature. Its entire concept was built on the language of hard science fiction. The lore states plainly that it is the result of a spaceborne virus, mutated by exposure to a laser, a being of crystallized genetic material given form. Its name even evokes deoxyribonucleic acid. Where Clefairy's story was implied by a moonstone, Deoxys' story was written in its double helix arms and its ability to reconfigure its own DNA. The franchise had moved from asking, could they be from space, to showing a Pokémon that was, quite literally, living genetic code from the cosmos. This represented the maturation of an idea that began as a tantalizing whisper. From the ambiguous, lunar-adjacent mystery of the first generation to the suggestive ecological notes in the Pokédex, to the bold, unambiguous science fiction design of Deoxys, the path shows a clear narrative progression. The alien Pokémon were no longer just creatures of rumor or shadowy myth. They were becoming subjects of study, their otherworldly biology, not a secret to be uncovered, but the very story being told. So as we look back, a lineage of ideas, one branch remains rooted in the beautiful, enduring folklore of the moon, a mystery that invites endless speculation. But the other branch, the one that Deoxys truly represents, points to a future where a Pokémon's alien nature isn't a rumor you hear around a campfire. It's a set of observable facts about cellular mutation, cosmic radiation, and life that chooses a path through the vacuum between worlds. It's the difference between a legend whispered about a moon, a life form that has physically arrived from the dark of deep space. So we were tracking how the language of Pokémon lore began to shift from the mystical whispers of the early games towards something that sounded more like observation, like study. That movement from folklore to biology didn't stop in the Johto region. If anything, it accelerated, and it prepared the ground for a creature that would finally, explicitly, make the extraterrestrial question undeniable. For years, the franchise had dangled clues. The moon, the stones, the meteorites, the anime spaceships. It was all suggestion, all beautiful ambiguity. Then in Generation 3, that ambiguity crystallized into a form. That form is Deoxys. If Clefairy and its kin asked a question from the shadows of Mount Moon, Deoxys is the answer that descends from the void of deep space. Its arrival in Ruby and Sapphire wasn't just another addition to the Pokédex. It was a sharp tonal pivot. The game moved from the ancient mysteries and ecological whispers of Hoenn's legends to something that felt less like myth and more like science fiction. This was no longer about a moonlit dance or a stone's strange power. This was about genetic material, about viral mutation, about a life form that didn't evolve in a forest or a sea, but was forged in the cosmic radiation between stars. Look at its design. It is profoundly alien, in a way the franchise had only gestured at before. Deoxys is a biological entity, but it feels like it was designed by a physicist and a geneticist. Its body is elastic, capable of shifting its limbs and torso into different configurations, as if its very structure is unstable, adapting to pressures unknown on Earth. Its head is a smooth, featureless expanse, lacking the expressive eyes or mouth common to terrestrial Pokémon. It has no face we can read, The central crystal in its chest pulses with the cold inner light. This isn't a creature with fur or scales, or a natural history we can trace back to prehistoric seas. It is the living embodiment of a double helix, its name a direct nod to deoxyribonucleic acid. It looks like what you'd expect if a complex spaceborne virus were to achieve sentience. The official lore confirms this. Deoxys is said to be the result of a virus from space that was altered and mutated by a powerful laser beam, transforming it into a new life form. It's a story rooted in panspermia and radiation, concepts from hard science, not fairy tales. This is the franchise finally committing to the biological reality behind the cosmic hint, where previous entries used words like moonlight and mysterious. Deoxys's entries speak of its crystal transforming to sense its surroundings, of its marvelous cellular structure that can even repair itself. It's the difference between a legend about the moon and an astrophysical report on an extraterrestrial organism. In a way, Deoxys validates the entire long, strange journey that started with Clefairy. It takes the maybe from the moon wonder and projects it out into the galaxy, answering with a definitive yes from the stars. And this is what that might actually look like. It represents a franchise growing up, moving from the backyard myths of childhood into the vast, awe-inspiring, and sometimes terrifying scale of the cosmos. It tells us that the mystery wasn't just local folklore, but a prelude to a much larger, more complex universe, filled with life that doesn't play by our rules. And with that door now blown open, the question becomes what other cosmic forms might be out there, waiting to be discovered, and what stories they might tell about the fundamental nature of life itself. Last time we met Deoxys as the moment Pokémon stepped fully into the realm of cosmic science fiction. But its origin story isn't just a dramatic twist, it's a precise, biological blueprint for extraterrestrial life. One that takes familiar scientific concepts and weaves them into an unsettlingly plausible creation myth. The lore states that Deoxys began as a virus, drifting silently through the void of outer space. It wasn't a creature with thoughts or intentions. It was simply a strand of genetic material, an infectious particle designed to replicate. Its journey was one of immense distance and time, a concept we know as panspermia. The idea that life or its building blocks can travel between planets on asteroids or comets. This space-borne virus was the ultimate opportunist, waiting for the right moment. That moment came when the virus encountered a potent source of energy, laser radiation. It wasn't a gentle transformation. The concentrated beam of light struck the viral particles, bombarding their genetic structure. What followed was not evolution in the gradual natural sense, but violent, instantaneous mutation. The radiation scrambled its code, forcing it to adapt and change in a single, explosive event. This is accidental evolution, a cosmic accident where an external force, a laser perhaps from a satellite or a natural stellar phenomenon, acts as a chaotic catalyst. Out of that destructive radiation, something new emerged. The viral particles fused, reformed, and gained a coherent biological form. They gained the ability to think, to move, to become a singular entity. Deoxys is the result, a living, thinking organism born from the fusion of a panspermia traveler, a mutative agent, and a freak accident of radiation. Its very name, a reference to deoxyribonucleic acid, underscores this. It is DNA made manifest, a genetic entity that has literally become a person. This origin stands in stark contrast to the mystery of Clefairy. For years we talked about Clefairy and its family being from space, but that association was always symbolic, linked to moonstones and meteorites. It was folklore. Deoxys isn't merely with space, it was by space. The cosmos wasn't just its home, it was the chisel that shaped it from raw, microscopic clay. And here is the truly disturbing implication this raises. If Deoxys began as something so small, so simple and so invisible, a virus on the wind, then what else might be drifting through that silent void? What other microscopic, almost unnoticeable seeds of alien life are travelling between stars right now, waiting for their own moment of transformative radiation? The idea that intelligent or complex alien life might not arrive in a grand visible spaceship, but as a nearly undetectable particle that slowly, accidentally builds itself into something new, is a far more cosmic and unsettling thought. It suggests that the line between the sterile vacuum of space and the miracle of life is thinner than we imagine, and that the greatest adventures and most alien encounters might begin not with a flash in the sky, but with a microscopic change in the deep, cold dark. This shift toward concrete, biological sci-fi didn't end with Deoxys. As the franchise continued to grow, it began to explore other forms of ancient, powerful and equally mysterious beings that seemed to bridge the gap between myth and something more elemental. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. We've talked about where Deoxys comes from, a virus drifting through the cold between stars, struck by the accidental hand of human technology and rewritten into something new. That origin story is powerful on its own, but Deoxys doesn't just have a backstory. It has a name that tells you exactly what it is, and a body that makes the invisible architecture of life visible. Let's start with the name, Deoxys. It's not a random syllable combo designed to sound cool, though it certainly does. Say it slowly and you'll hear the echo of deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, the molecule that encodes the instructions for every living thing on Earth. The designers didn't hide this connection, they leaned into it. The name is a signal, a breadcrumb, left for anyone who remembers high school biology. It's saying, this creature is not just alive, it is life itself distilled into a form you can look at, and what a form it is. Take a close look at Deoxys, and you start to see the language of molecular biology translated into creature design. Its body is sleek, almost clinical, with a smoothness that feels less like skin, and more like something viewed under a microscope at extreme magnification. The crystal embedded in its chest is its most striking feature. It sits there like a gemstone, but what it represents is far more fundamental. It's been described as the core of the Pokémon, the seat of its consciousness. Think about that for a moment. A living being whose mind, whose sense of self, is housed in a hard, translucent structure at the center of its body. That's not how we think about intelligence working, but it is how we think about a nucleus working. The crystal is a nucleus. Deoxys is a cell that learned to walk, to fight, to think. Its head carries a pattern that evokes the double helix without literally depicting it. The curves and spirals suggest something coiled, something that contains information in its very shape. And those arms, long, whip-like, almost liquid in how they move. They don't look like the limbs of an animal. They look like the chromatids that form when DNA replicates. Every visual element in Deoxys' design is pulling from the same source. It's not an alien in the way science fiction typically gives us aliens, beings from another planet that happen to look like strange animals. It's an alien in the deepest possible sense. It's a creature whose entire biology is foreign to the categories we normally use. This is what makes Deoxys so different from Clefairy and Clefable. Those Pokémon are alien-coded. They carry the mystery of the moon, the suggestion that they might have come from somewhere else, but they still operate within the framework of recognizable animal biology. They're small, round, cute. You can imagine them living in a cave. Deoxys doesn't fit in a cave. It doesn't fit in an ecosystem. It exists as a living principle. It is mutation given a body. And that brings us to something extraordinary about Deoxys that no other Pokémon had really attempted before. Its forms. Deoxys doesn't have one shape. It has four. Normal form, attack form, defense form, and speed form. Each one rearranges the same basic elements into a dramatically different silhouette. In normal form, it stands balanced, symmetrical, composed. In attack form, those whip-like arms extend into long, jagged blades. The body becomes sharper, more aggressive, all economy and menace. Defense form thickens everything. The torso broadens, The limbs compress, and Deoxys becomes something like a fortress made of flesh. And in speed forme, the body tapers, streamlines, and the limbs fold in to create something that looks like it could cut through atmosphere. These aren't just alternate costumes. They're expressions of what mutation actually does at the biological level. Mutation is change. It's the constant, restless rewriting of genetic code that drives evolution. Most mutations are small, invisible, unremarkable, but some reshape everything. Deoxys's shifting forms are that process made visible and immediate. It doesn't evolve in the traditional Pokémon sense, gaining power through experience or bonding with a trainer. It reshapes itself based on what it needs to be in the moment. That's not training. That's adaptation in real time. That's what a virus does when it encounters a new host environment. It changes or it dies. This is why the Pokémon was designed the way it was. Deoxys isn't just a cool-looking creature that happens to reference DNA. It's an attempt to embody a biological concept. The designers weren't just asking, what would an alien look like? They were asking, what would alien biology feel like from the inside? Not from the perspective of a human encountering it, but from the perspective of the organism itself. A being whose body is constantly in flux, whose identity isn't fixed to a single form, whose very structure is information, written in a language that doesn't require flesh or bone or blood. When you stand in Deoxys's shoes, or whatever it uses in place of shoes, you begin to understand that what we think of as a stable body is actually just one possibility among many. Your DNA is doing something similar right now. At this very moment, inside your cells, strands of genetic code are being copied, proofread, occasionally miscopied. Most of those miscopies are corrected. Some aren't. Some become the raw material for something new. Deoxys is that process without the safety net. It's mutation unleashed. It's the creative engine of life, without the biological brakes that keep it from tearing itself apart. That's the radical thing about Deoxys. It's not just a visitor from space. It's a mirror. It reflects back to us the most fundamental process that makes all life possible. And it asks us to confront how strange that process really is. We carry DNA in every cell of our bodies. That DNA is constantly being read, copied, and occasionally altered. We are all, in a sense, products of mutation. Deoxys simply takes that hidden reality and gives it a face. And what a face! Those hollow, angular eyes. That expression that reads as neither friendly nor hostile, but simply aware. Deoxys looks at you like a microscope looks at a specimen, not with malice, with attention, with the dispassionate focus of something that is still figuring out what it is. This is where the alien Pokémon concept reaches its most philosophical point. Clefairy and Cleffable suggest that life might come from the moon. That's a poetic idea. Deoxys suggests something harder and more unsettling, that life itself might be the alien thing, that the molecules and processes we take for granted as the foundation of our existence are in truth deeply strange. Strangeness isn't something that happens only on distant planets. It's happening inside you right now, in every cell, every hour of every day. The franchise had come a long way from the gentle moonlit mysteries of Generation 1, but Deoxys wasn't the end of that journey. It was a new beginning, and what came next would push the boundaries of what a Pokémon could represent even further, moving from the biology of individual creatures to something much larger, something about the nature of time itself. We left off with that name, that direct link to the fundamental code of life. But a name is just a label. The true revelation of what Deoxys is, the full, undeniable statement of its otherness, comes from looking at the form that name was attached to. And that form is a masterclass in using body language to scream the word alien. Start with the arms. They aren't really arms in any terrestrial sense. They're tentacles, or perhaps living cables, long and sinuous and ending in a sharp, blade-like claw. They don't have the segmented joints of a limb, the clear elbow or wrist. They move with a fluid, almost boneless grace that suggests a body built in a lower gravity, or perhaps no gravity at all. They're weapons, yes, But more than that, they're signals. They tell you immediately that this creature's toolkit for interacting with the world is nothing like a mammal's, nothing like a reptile's. It's something that evolved to grasp and slash in a completely different medium. Then there's the head. It's not a head, it's a geometric shape. A sharp crystalline crest sits atop a torso that seems to merge directly into it, with no discernible neck. The face, if you can call it that, is a single glowing cyclopean eye. There's no expression to read, no familiar features to empathize with. It's an interface, not a countenance. It's the face of a computer or a radar dish. It feels designed for a purpose, not shaped by a history of eating, breathing, and socializing. That angularity, that refusal to be soft or rounded, is a visual shorthand we've learned from decades of science fiction. Sharp angles on a living thing feel unnatural, feel technological, feel hostile, and the proportions are just deeply wrong. The torso is an inverted ribbed cone, like a stripped-down engine casing. The legs are thin, almost delicate, supporting this upper mass in a way that seems structurally improbable. There is no fur, no feather, no scales. The texture is smooth, synthetic-looking, like polished ceramic or hardened resin. Deoxys doesn't look like a thing that grew. It looks like a thing that was built, or perhaps mutated into a shape that nature would never endorse. Every inch of it is a rejection of the evolutionary compromises in earthly life. It's a biology of pure function, divorced from comfort or familiarity. Now compare that to the very first alien candidate we discussed. Look at Clefairy. Even before you read a single word of its Pokédex entry, what does its body tell you? It's soft, it's round, it's pink, it has tiny stubby limbs and a face with big expressive eyes. It has a tail that could belong to a bunny or a kangaroo. Its silhouette is immediately and deeply familiar. It taps into our innate nurturing response to baby-like features. The big head, the round belly, the cute little paws. It's a mammalian silhouette, a comforting one. You could believe it hopped out of a burrow. You could believe it needed a warm milk. Its body is an open book, and the story it tells is one of terrestrial, cuddly life. This is the crucial design language the franchise uses. When a Pokémon is meant to be a delightful mystery, creature of folklore and moonbeams, it gets a body like Clefairy's. The mystery is in its behavior and its lore, not in its basic anatomical template. The body says, I belong here. I'm part of your world, just a very magical, hidden part of it. The alien quality is a secret, a narrative layer you peel back. Deoxys's body does the opposite. It doesn't hide its alien nature, it proclaims it. The design is the declaration. Long before you learn it's a mutated space virus, before you see its Pokédex entry detailing its extraterrestrial origin, you know. You know because tentacles are not from around here. Crystalline, singular eyes are not from around here. A ribbed, metallic torso is not from around here. The franchise is using visual grammar to tell you that the time for ambiguity is over. We're no longer whispering about moonstones and meteorite showers. We are stating, in the clearest possible terms, that this is a visitor from the void. Its very posture, a floating coiled readiness, is that of a classic flying saucer occupant. So while Clefairy's story began as a piece of folklore, or maybe they're from the moon, theory whispered in Pokédex margins and animated side stories, Deoxys arrived as a biological fact. Its design isn't suggestive, it's evidentiary. It's the difference between a ghost story, told around a campfire, and a lab report, documenting a recovered specimen. One makes you look up at the night sky with wonder. The other makes you look up with a chill, because the report is very, very specific. And that specificity, that shift from mystical implication to science fiction conclusion, would come to how the franchise approached the concept of the extraterrestrial for years to come. We've spent the last few chapters tracing Deoxys from a cosmic virus to a genetic face, and even walking through its alien anatomy. But to truly grasp its nature, you have to look at what that body does. Because Deoxys isn't a static sculpture, it's a machine with multiple settings. It changes. In gameplay, this manifests as its signature ability to shift between 4 distinct forms. Normal, attack, defense, and speed. This isn't a simple costume change or a stat boost. Each form dramatically reconfigures its body. The normal form is the baseline, a somewhat balanced but unsettling humanoid. The attack form sacrifices bulk for longer, sharper arms, and a more pronounced aggressive posture. The defense form becomes a wider, more grounded fortress of crystalline mass, and the speed form elongates its limbs and core into a streamlined, almost serpentine shape, built for velocity. What we're seeing here is a narrative consequence of its origin. If Deoxys is a mutated virus with DNA at its core, then this form shifting isn't magic. It's an extreme expression of biological plasticity. It's adapting. Its very structure is fluid, capable of rapid, functional reorganization. This isn't a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. This is a single organism expressing radically different physical blueprints in real time, each optimized for a specific purpose: conflict, endurance, or pursuit. It raises a profound question about its stability. Is it transforming from one state to another? Or are all these forms latent functions of one deeply unstable organism, each one a different answer to the question, what is a body for? This mechanic fundamentally challenges our idea of what a Pokémon species is. Most creatures we've encountered have a defined, stable anatomy. They evolve, certainly, but that is a one-time permanent change into a new fixed form. Deoxys presents something else entirely. A permanent state of potential change. It doesn't have one body. It has a repertoire. It suggests that alien life, born from cosmic accident and genetic chaos, might not obey our familiar categories. It might not have a natural form at all, only a series of functional configurations. It is not so much a creature as it is a versatile biological process given a shape, and then another and another. When you see it shift mid-battle, you're not just watching a strategic animation. You're witnessing a fundamental aspect of its alien biology. It's a reminder that the principles governing life elsewhere in the universe might be so different from our own that concepts like anatomy, stability, and even identity would need to be completely redefined. The concept of a single fixed body plan is a luxury of life that has found a stable niche. For an organism that began as a wandering virus and now exists in a state of perpetual flux, the ability to become whatever is necessary, moment by moment, might be the only true form of survival. And this idea of life defining its own rules, of biology bending into new and unfamiliar shapes, that doesn't stop with one remarkable species. It sets the stage for the next great mystery in our journey. Those four shifting forms aren't just a quirk of battle strategy. They are a clue to the very core of what Deoxys is. It's a being defined by biological plasticity, a genome in constant fluid motion. But to understand how such a thing could come to be, we have to rewind. We have to look past the finished creature, with its crystalline core and its stretchy, symbiotic arms, and go back to the beginning of its story. And that beginning is microscopic, and it is incredibly, violently accidental. The official lore, woven through Pokédex entries and supplementary materials, paints a picture that is part science fiction, part horror. It starts not on a planet, but in the void between them. A virus, incredibly rare, drifting through the cold interstellar space for eons. A strand of biological code, without a host, without a purpose, just surviving in the most minimal way. Then, this ancient space traveler intercepts a beam of energy. Not sunlight, not a solar flare, a laser. Likely the focused beam of some human or perhaps even alien research satellite, scanning the cosmos. The intersection is chance. The effect is permanent. The radiation doesn't just kill the virus, it mutates it. It reshapes its fundamental structure, unlocking a terrifying new potential. This is not evolution through natural selection over millennia. This is accelerated, forced alteration by a technological hand. And what grows from that radiation-blasted particle? Something that learns. Something that develops a complex, shifting physiology. Something that becomes Deoxys. This is the core of the mystery and the discomfort. No scientist in the Pokémon world sits down at a lab bench and designs this creature. There is no projectile, no intended outcome. It is a byproduct, a catastrophic failure of containment, or an unforeseen consequence of deep space energy research. Yet, without that beam of coherent light, without human technology reaching out into the dark, the virus would have remained just a virus. It would never have become sentient. It would never have developed the ability to change its form, to think, to potentially feel. Deoxys exists in the strange space between a natural organism and an artificial creation. It was not built, but it was, in a very real sense, made. This idea that energy is not just a force but a catalyst for becoming runs deep through the Pokémon franchise. Think back to how life is often born in these stories. The energy of the Moonstone doesn't just power an evolution. It seems to reshape a creature's destiny, pulling it from a terrestrial path towards something more cosmic. Evolutionary stones are concentrated energy that fundamentally rewrites biology. Deoxys is the ultimate expression of that theme, but with a darker, more scientific edge. It's not the gentle, mythic glow of a moonstone. It's the sharp, artificial brilliance of a laser. It frames energy as both a scientific principle, radiation, mutation, electromagnetic spectra, and as a kind of mystical prime mover. The power to create, to transform, to accidentally birth a new form of life from a speck of cosmic dust. So what then is Deoxys? The question is deliberately left unanswered, because the answer complicates the world. Is it a natural organism, just one that took an exceptionally weird path to existence, like a deep-sea creature evolving in total darkness? Is it a pure accident, a one-in-a-trillion fluke of radiation and biology that should be studied, contained, or perhaps even pitied? Or is it something else entirely? A new category of life altogether? A techno-biological hybrid, an emergent form of intelligence sparked by the collision of the organic and the artificial? It is a living question mark, a being that challenges the neat categories of nature. And that leaves us looking at not just what Deoxys can do in battle, or how its forms shift, but at the energy and the events that gave it life. It leads us to wonder what else might be changing in the shadows of the world, where the lines between natural and created are growing thin. That accidental creation, that fusion of cosmic accident and terrestrial technology, fundamentally changed the question. It was no longer about where a creature might have come from, but about what it was doing here and what it wanted. When Deoxys first entered public consciousness, it didn't arrive with a spaceship or a friendly wave. It arrived as an anomaly. Reports came in of a being unlike any recorded Pokémon, its body shifting and reforming, possessing an intelligence that felt not just alien, but actively foreign. This wasn't a Clefairy, sparking a whimsical theory among a few researchers on a moonlit mountain. This was an organism that demanded a response. Consider the difference in human reaction. For decades, the idea of Clefairy being extraterrestrial was a delightful mystery, a fun piece of trivia that added a layer of wonder. People imagined it, wrote stories about it, and the idea of a moon-loving fairy Pokémon felt appropriately magical. The threat, if any, was vague and distant, more about the uncanny valley of cute creatures being from elsewhere. Deoxys collapsed that distance. Its presence on Earth wasn't a mystery to be pondered. It was a situation to be managed. Where Clefairy inspired curiosity and a touch of cosmic whimsy, Deoxys inspired a cold, institutional fear. This was not a pet or a partner. This was an unidentifiable organism of immense power, with a biology based on unstable, mutagenic principles. Its very existence was a challenge to our understanding of life. The conflict became one of observation and control. Scientists and clandestine organizations didn't just study it, they monitored it. Its movements were tracked, its forms documented with urgency. The playful, maybe they're from the moon theory, gave way to the stark reality of a creature that could reconfigure its own DNA. Containment wasn't about catching it in a Pokéball for a trainer. It was about preventing a potential catastrophe. What would it do? Could it communicate? Was its adaptation a defense mechanism or a prelude to something more? This marked the point where the alien question in this world acquired real, tangible stakes. We had moved from folklore to science fiction. The presence of Deoxys suggested that the cosmos wasn't just a source of wonder, but of genuine unpredictable threats. It implied a larger universe of life that was indifferent, even hostile, to the ecosystems and societies it might intersect with. And yet, even within that framework of fear, a strange kind of awe persisted. To look upon Deoxys was to look upon life from a different evolutionary tree, one shaped by stellar radiation and genetic chaos rather than sunlight and soil. Its cold, crystalline eyes held no malice that we could discern, only an intense, alien scrutiny. We were perhaps as strange to it as it was to us. The conflict wasn't necessarily one of good versus evil, but of two utterly incompatible forms of existence colliding. The franchise had built its mythical foundation on the possibility of gentle visitors, on starlight and fairy dust. With Deoxys, it built a fortress on the foundation of viral possibility and clinical observation. The arrival meant that the sky was no longer just a canvas for fantasy, but a corridor. And what travelled that corridor wasn't always going to understand us or care to. This reality forced a new kind of readiness, a new understanding of what alien truly meant when it stepped out of the myth and into the world. It was no longer a question of if we were alone, but of how prepared we were for what might come next. And in the shadows of that question, other whispers began to stir, of different portals and older powers, suggesting the arrival of Deoxys was just one thread in a much larger tapestry. So while the games presented Deoxys primarily as a rare, powerful encounter, a scientific curiosity that posed a threat if provoked, the media that followed took that core idea and broadcast it on a much larger scale. The cinematic debut of Deoxys in Destiny Deoxys didn't just show a battle. It built a whole world around that extraterrestrial arrival, using the Pokémon's origin story as the foundation for a spectacle about fear and misunderstanding. The film opens by grounding the cosmic in the tangible, a meteorite streaking across the sky, not as a distant event, but as something heading for a specific place. This isn't just lore from a Pokédex entry anymore. It's a physical, arriving threat. That meteorite contains the virus that will become Deoxys, but the movie immediately ties it to a human story. It strikes near a research laboratory, a site of scientific observation. In the games, the link between space and science was implicit. Here it's the entire premise. The impact doesn't just deposit a space virus. It creates a direct causal chain involving human technology and ambition. As the story unfolds, the film expands the concept by pulling it into the heart of human civilization. The action moves from the isolated lab to a sprawling, neon-lit city. This is no longer a mystery unfolding in the wilds of Route 103 or a remote island. It's a crisis playing out on city streets, forcing a confrontation on a societal scale. Deoxys in its various forms, not just as a creature adapting to a new environment, but as a force that destabilizes the built human world. The film uses the city as a character itself, a symbol of human order being challenged by an alien intelligence. And that alien intelligence is given a direct, competing perspective through the film's human protagonist, a boy named Tori. His connection to Deoxys, born from a childhood encounter during the meteorite's fall, isn't about scientific classification or battle prowess. It's emotional. He perceives Deoxys not as an invader, but as a fellow lost being, a creature of grief and confusion. This sets up the central conflict, which is far more about internal human struggle than external monster battling. The question isn't just, what is this Pokémon? It becomes, can we understand it? Can we coexist? The film masterfully turns an origin detail, the virus mutating in space, into this emotional core. The fear and misunderstanding aren't directed at a mindless beast. They're aimed at Deoxys specifically because it's different, because it comes from beyond, because its very nature is alien and unsettling. Its ability to change forms isn't just a gameplay mechanic here. It's portrayed as something uncanny and frightening to the public, fueling their panic. The scientists see a specimen to contain. The public sees a monster to fear. and only Tori sees the hurt behind the spectacle. So, the movie takes the foundational lore of a spaceborne organism and explodes it into a narrative about first contact. It moves the concept from the Pokédex to the planet's surface, making the alien presence a catalyst for exploring human prejudice and fear of the unknown. The ultimate spectacle isn't just the battle in the city skies, but the much quieter, more difficult spectacle of people confronting their own capacity for misunderstanding. This emotional battleground, established here with Deoxys, sets a template for how later stories would handle otherworldly beings, not just as curiosities or threats, but as mirrors reflecting our own hesitations. From the meteor-streaked skies and urban battlegrounds of that cinematic story, where a living comet meets human science, we can pull back and see a pattern that's been running through Pokémon all along. Because Deoxys isn't just an example of a sci-fi alien, it's the culmination of an idea the franchise had been nurturing for nearly a decade. And the best way to understand what Deoxys represents is to look back at the first Pokémon that ever made us ask if something in the games might not be from this world. That first question mark, that original cryptic clue, is Clefairy. When the original games were released in 1996, Clefairy wasn't labelled an alien. It was a rare, charming creature tied to a place called Mount Moon and a mysterious item, the Moonstone. Its evolution felt less like growth and more like a revelation, unlocked by an object with clear celestial symbolism. And it wasn't alone. Its pre-evolution, Cleffa, was later described as a being that might arrive on meteorites, a tiny star-dusted sprite. The Pokédex entries for the whole line hummed with lunar and cosmic undertones, visions of meteor showers, impact sites, and a deep, quiet connection to the night sky. But they stopped short of stating an origin. The tone was one of folklore and possibility. The strange was presented not as dangerous, but as wondrous, intimate, and just a little bit eerie, like a story you'd hear from an old friend about something they saw once, under a full moon. It was the anime, then in its infancy, that took that whisper of a theory and turned it into a narrative. In episodes set around Mount Moon, Professor Seymour's theories were laid out. What if Clefairy came from space? And most iconically, in the Clefairy Fable storyline, that idea was made literal. Here were Clefairy, actively gathering objects to repair a spaceship, preparing for a journey home. That anime interpretation became the dominant one for a generation of fans. It cemented the Clefairy line not just as moon-related, but as extraterrestrial visitors, peaceful, quirky, and capable of technological ingenuity. This is the alien of folklore, mysterious, tied to a celestial body we can see, and operating on a logic that feels like magic. Then, 6 years later in 2002, the franchise introduced Deoxys. It arrived not with the soft mystery of moonlight, but with the hard glare of science fiction. Its very name is a riff on deoxyribonucleic acid. Its form, with its crystalline core and tentacle-like arms, doesn't feel like folklore. It feels like a biological diagram come to life. Its backstory is explicit. A virus from deep space, mutated by laser radiation into a sentient, shape-shifting entity. This is the alien of the laboratory, of mutation and DNA, of panspermia theories and high-tech fear. Deoxys doesn't ask if it's from space. It tells you it is, in the language of genetic code and cosmic radiation. So here, side by side, you have two completely different expressions of the same core Pokémon concept. Clefairy represents the alien as folklore, moonlight, uncertainty, and the possibility that the strange and unknown can be friendly, even magical. It's an alien of invitation and mystery. Deoxys represents the alien as hard science fiction, mutation, DNA, radiation, and the explicit, often clinical language of extraterrestrial biology. It's an alien of confrontation and analysis. And what's remarkable is that the franchise never replaces one with the other. It doesn't say, okay, we did the moon myth, now let's do real science. Instead, it holds both ideas in its world at the same time, letting them operate in parallel. The comforting moonlit mystery of the Clefairy line coexists with the startling space virus reality of Deoxys. This duality shows Pokémon's evolving identity. It grew from a series rooted in urban legends, vague Pokédex hints, and playful ambiguity to one that could also embrace clear, dramatic science fiction concepts. But it didn't discard its past to do so. It just gave us two kinds of alien. One whispers from the moon, a friend in the starlight. The other arrives from the void, a puzzle written in living code. Both are fundamental to the secret history. And looking at this spectrum, from folklore to fiction, you can start to see how the very idea of the other in Pokémon is constructed from a gentle, lunar curiosity to a radiant, cosmic threat. It's a pattern that extends beyond just these two examples, into how the series visualizes everything that doesn't quite belong. We've seen how Clefairy and Deoxys establish two poles of the alien concept, one rooted in lunar folklore, the other in cold biological science fiction. But that initial binary doesn't contain the idea. Once those foundations were laid, the franchise began using them as building blocks, creating a whole toolbox of extraterrestrial themes that could be mixed, matched and recombined. The Clefairy tradition, with its blend of celestial wonder and subtle unease, didn't fade. It echoed forward in designs like Lunala, the legendary bat from the Alola region. Where Clefairy hints at a vague moonborn origin, Lunala is presented as a literal cosmic entity, a creator of ultraspace, whose wings are said to be displays of the night sky. The folklore element is amplified to mythic proportions, but the core link to the moon and stars remains. Its counterpart, Solgaleo, does the same for solar imagery, expanding the celestial pantheon far beyond a single mysterious species. Then you have the Necrozma line, which takes the Deoxys blueprint of an alien entity defined by transformation and pushes it into a more abstract, almost painful direction. Necrozma is described as a prismatic, ancient being that devours light, its various forms representing states of power and dependency. It's not a mutated virus like Deoxys, but its origin is equally cosmic, and its effect on the world is technological in a sense. It can warp the environment, alter the sky, and even connect to other dimensions through ultra wormholes. It feels like a cosmic puzzle, a living alien catastrophe. Speaking of ultra wormholes, that entire concept becomes a doorway for the alien legacy. The ultra beasts, like Nihiligo, the jellyfish-like entity that controls people, or Guzzlord, the endless void-given form, introduce the idea of intentional, if bizarre, alien life from other worlds. Nihiligo, with its neurotoxins and parasitic behavior, blends the biology of Deoxys with a predatory, almost technological precision. The lore shifts from this being arrived from space to there are entire ecosystems of alien life, and they can cross over. It's a move from individual anomaly to established cosmic geography. This toolbox approach shows up in smaller, more surprising places too. Take Elgium and Beheum. Their Pokédex entries are a direct lineage from the Clefairy meteorite idea, but filtered through a 50s science fiction lens. They are tied to radio signals, Area 51-style government secrecy, and memories. One entry suggests they may have come from a low-temperature planet. Here, the alien mystery is coded through technology and conspiracy, not just moonlight or space viruses. And then there are the Pokémon, like Deoxys and Genesect, that explicitly deal with artificial origins or technological alteration, while Genesect is a resurrected fossil weaponized by Team Plasma. Its design and story engage with similar questions of science, mutation, and are being made into a tool of immense power. It's a terrestrial twist on the cosmic theme, showing how the franchise applies the alien feeling to human-made creations. Even the mythos around certain stars gets a Pokémon. Cosmog, the tiny nebula Pokémon, is the embodiment of star stuff. Its evolution into Solgaleo or Lunala is a process of cosmic creation itself, making it the most direct personification of the astronomical theme in the franchise's history. It's no longer just a creature of the stars, it's a star in a formative state. So the alien mythology of Pokémon didn't just add more aliens, it fractured the idea into its component parts. You now have the lunar folkloric line, the deep space sci-fi line, the dimensional traveler line, the UFO conspiracy line, and the artificial lifeline. These threads can be woven into any new region's lore. A new legendary might be based on pulsar signals, or a new sub-legendary on a meteorite that brought intelligent spores. The toolbox is the canon. Each generation can reach in and pull out the elements that fit its story, whether that story needs the friendly mystery of a Clefairy, the cosmic horror of a Nihilego, or the genetic wonder of a Deoxys. The question is no longer, are they aliens? But what kind of alien story will this be? As these cosmic and extraterrestrial ideas become more integrated into the world's fabric, we also see a parallel development in how we understand our own world within the games. A deeper fascination with the planet's own deep history, recorded not in books, but in stone and bone. So after all that, after tracking the lineage from moonlight to meteorites, to viruses mutated by lasers, what is the actual thread that connects them? It's not a confirmed genealogy. There's no Pokédex entry that says Cleffa are the ancient ancestors of Deoxys. The real continuity is simpler and deeper. It's Pokémon's enduring fascination with the unexplained origin. Think back to where we started this whole story. A small, pink, fairy-like Pokémon stands beneath the silver glow of the moon. Now picture a crystalline, alien organism descending from the stardusted void. One is a creature of myth, whispered about on mountain tops. The other is a creature of science, born from a cosmic accident. The distance between them isn't measured in miles, but in the way we tell the story. The games have always been the curators of that mystery. The earliest Pokédex entries for Clefairy are artfully vague. They tie the Pokémon to moonstones to mount, moon to places of impact. They suggest a lunar connection without ever confirming an extraterrestrial one. Later, with Cleffa, the lore grows slightly bolder, mentioning meteorites and impact sites as their habitat, but it's always framed as observation, as a correlation the game presents without definitive proof. It's the quiet, persistent suggestion that this creature belongs to a different world. The anime, however, is a different kind of archive. It takes those game-born suggestions and spins them into bold narrative. It doesn't just hint, it proposes. It introduces the theory that Clefairy came from space. It dedicates entire episodes to the quest to rebuild a spaceship, to return home. In the anime, the speculation becomes the plot. The folklore becomes a legend you can watch unfold. And then there is Deoxys. Deoxys is what happens when legend becomes science fiction. It doesn't wear its alien nature as a mystery to be pondered, but as a biological fact. Its origin is stated plainly: a virus from deep space, transformed by the focus beam of a laser. Its name echoes DNA. Its form is genetic code made flesh, where Clefairy's otherworldliness is a poetic question. Deoxys is a laboratory report. The franchise had spent years exploring the eerie ambiguity of the moon. With Deoxys, it began the clinical exploration of the stars. This duality is the secret. Pokémon doesn't just have alien Pokémon. It has two distinct languages for talking about the unknown. One is the language of folklore, of moonlight and quiet magic, where origins are felt but never fully known. The other is the language of science fiction, of cosmic events and genetic manipulation, where origins are dangerous, explicit, and profound. One turns speculation into a bedtime story. The other turns it into a first contact scenario. So when a Pokémon fall from the sky in the games, or descend from a meteor in the anime, we're not just seeing a new species. We're seeing a question posed in two different ways. Is it a creature of myth, wrapped in the soft mystery of a story told for generations? Is it an alien, a product of cold cosmic physics and mutable biology? Or is it something simpler, just a creature in a universe full of them, waiting for the moment a human eye sees it, tries to understand it, and gives it a name?